Something is wrong beneath the Bay of Naples. Right now, as you watch this, the ground in one of Europe's most crowded coastlines is rising, slowly, silently, millimeter by millimeter, and the people standing on top of it are not standing on a mountain. They are standing inside a volcano, a vast, sunken 12 to 15 kilometer crater field called Campi Flegrei, the burning fields, and after months of escalating quakes, after the strongest tremor ever recorded, there cracked walls across the city. After the floor of an entire urban region lifted more than a meter, scientists are watching, the alert level is climbing, and roughly 500,000 people are now living inside an officially mapped death zone. This is not a story about a single peak that might blow its top. This is something stranger and in many ways more frightening. Because most people picture a volcano and they picture Vesuvius, that famous brooding cone on the far side of the bay, the one that buried Pompeii. They watch Vesuvius, they fear Vesuvius, but the real monster is on the other side of Naples. It is hiding in plain sight. It is under the harbor town of Pozzuoli, under the apartment blocks, under the highways and the schools and the seafront cafes. It does not look like a volcano at all. It looks like a city. And right now, that city is going up. Here are the hard numbers, and they are sobering. The current red zone evacuation plan, the official emergency map drawn up by Italian authorities, covers about 500,000 people, 500,000 human beings who would have to be moved if this thing turns. But the danger does not stop at the red line. The broader caldera area, the full bowl of this ancient supercrater, is home to roughly 900,000 residents. Nearly 1 million people living, sleeping, raising children directly on top of one of the most dangerous volcanic systems on planet Earth. There is no other supervolcano on the globe with a population packed this densely on its surface. None. And the ground beneath all of them has been moving since 2005. That movement has a name: bradyseism. It is an old word from this exact place, and it means slow earthquake. The gradual rising and sinking of the land as gas and superheated fluids surge through the rock far below. It is not lava climbing toward the surface. Not yet. It is pressure. Imagine a pot of water just before it boils. The lid trembling, steam forcing its way through every crack. That is what is happening under Pozzuoli. Hot fluids are pushing up. The crust is bulging, and the surface of the Earth is responding the only way it can. It is rising. Since this episode of unrest began in 2005, the ground in the Pozzuoli area has lifted approximately 1.4 meters. Read that again. Nearly 1.5 meters. Whole neighborhoods, whole harbor districts, slowly heaved upward like the deck of a ship rolling on a swell that never recedes. Streets have buckled, sewer lines have warped, the waterfront has shifted relative to the sea, and as the ground has risen, the earthquakes have come, not steadily, but exponentially. The shaking has accelerated, swarm after swarm, each cluster more intense than the last, building toward records that this caldera has never produced in the entire span of modern monitoring. In 2024 and into 2025, the quakes reached magnitudes around 4.4, 4.6. For a supervolcano, those numbers might sound small. They are not small to the people living there. The strongest of them, a magnitude 4.6 on June 30th, 2025, was felt right across Naples. It rattled windows. It sent residents pouring into the streets in the dark. It cracked walls and caused minor structural damage in a city where many buildings are old, stacked tight, and never engineered for a floor that won't stop trembling. These were the largest events ever recorded in this caldera. The ceiling of recorded history was broken in a single jolt, and then the ground kept rising. So what are the authorities doing? Right now, Italian Civil Protection is holding the caldera at a yellow alert. Attention. It means the system is unmistakably elevated, unmistakably restless, but it is still below the threshold that would trigger evacuation. Yellow is not panic. Yellow is the color of a warning light on a dashboard that has been blinking for years and is now blinking faster. Because as of early 2026, the uplift is running at roughly 10 millimeters every month, a centimeter month after month, the land of an entire urban region rising like dough. And the fumaroles, the steaming vents that hiss sulfur and gas across the Solfatara crater floor, are venting at elevated levels, the breath of the beast coming hotter and heavier than before. And here is the part that keeps the scientists honest, the part you need to hold on to. So far, they have not detected any direct signature of magma migrating upward. No clear sign that molten rock is making a run for the surface. The instruments, the seismometers, the GPS arrays, the gas sensors that ring this caldera have not caught the telltale fingerprint of rising melt. That is the reassurance. That is the reason the alert is yellow and not red. The pressure driving this is, as best anyone can tell, gas and fluid, not lava on the move. But "not yet" is doing a tremendous amount of work in that sentence. Because to understand why a yellow alert caldera with no rising magma still has emergency planners losing sleep, you have to understand what Campi Flegrei actually is. You have to go back, not years, not centuries, but tens of thousands of years, to the catastrophe that earned this place the title of Supervolcano in the first place. You have to understand the eruption that may have helped reshape the destiny of an entire continent. Because the ground rising under Naples today is connected directly to a fire that scorched Europe almost 40,000 years ago. Roll the clock back about 39,000 years, the Campanian ignimbrite eruption. This was not a hill-coughing ash. This was one of the largest volcanic events Europe has ever witnessed, an explosion so colossal it blasted hundreds of cubic kilometers of rock and pumice into the sky. The column would have punched through the stratosphere. Ash didn't just dust the neighborhood, it fell across the Mediterranean, across the Balkans, all the way to the plains of what is now Russia. Geologists find that signature layer today buried in soil thousands of kilometers away, a thin gray bookmark in the rock that says, "On this day, the sky over Europe turned to poison." And here's the haunting part. This eruption happened at a moment when our own species was spreading across the continent and when the Neanderthals were vanishing. Some researchers have argued that the sulfur, the cold, the years of ruined skies that followed may have helped tip an already struggling population over the edge. We cannot prove it, but picture it. A volcanic winter clamping down on a continent already gripped by ice age. Crops of the wild kind failing, game animals dying off. A sun that came up dim and orange for season after season. That is the scale of what Campi Flegrei is capable of. That is why it carries the word supervolcano. This is the same ground now rising 10 millimeters a month beneath 500,000 people. But the story doesn't stop there, because the eruption that gave us the shape of the place we see today came later, about 15,000 years ago. And it has a name, the Neapolitan Yellow Tuff eruption. This was the blast that carved out the Great Sunken Bowl, the caldera floor that the city of Pozzuoli sits on right now. When a magma chamber that vast empties itself in a paroxysm, the ground above has nothing left to stand on. It collapses inward, it sinks. That sinking is what made the bay, the curved coastline, the strange flat depression ringed by old craters. Every street, every apartment block, every fishing harbor in the red zone today is built inside the scar of an ancient collapse. The residents aren't living near the volcano, they are living inside it. So with a history like that, two of the most violent eruptions in European prehistory, you'd expect the recent record to be just as terrifying. And here is the twist that changes everything about how you should read today's unrest. The last time Campi Flegrei actually erupted, it was almost gentle by comparison. The year was 1538. And what it produced was not a continent-darkening catastrophe. It was a hill, a single new hill called Monte Nuovo, literally New Mountain, that rose up out of the ground over the course of just a few days. People watched it form. The earth split, ash and rock spewed out, and where there had been low ground near the coast, a cone roughly 130 meters tall now stood. It buried a village. It killed people who came too close. But on the geological scale, it was modest, a whimper from a giant that had once roared. And that single hill may be the single most important clue we have about what's happening right now, because here is where history doesn't just echo, it rhymes. That 1538 eruption did not come out of nowhere. It was preceded by a long, slow, grinding period of ground uplift. an uplift that began, by the geological record, around the year 1400 and continued for well over a century, all the way up to 1536, just 2 years before the ground finally tore open. More than 130 years of the land slowly swelling, and then, after all that patient rising, the release. Now ask yourself the obvious, chilling question. What is the source feeding the uplift under Pozzuoli today? It is the same shallow system, the same restless plumbing beneath the same caldera floor that swelled for a century and then built Monte Nuovo in a matter of days. The unrest we are watching now is not a new mystery. It is, geologically speaking, a familiar pattern playing out again. The slow inhale before some kind of exhale. The difference is that in 1400 there were no 500,000 people stacked on top of it, and if you want to actually see this rhythm written into stone, not in a textbook, not in a model, but with your own eyes, there is a place in Pozzuoli where you can stand and read it like a ruler. The Romans, almost 2,000 years ago, built a marketplace there, a structure with tall marble columns that for centuries was mistaken for a temple. And on those columns, several meters above the ground, there is a band of damage, holes, borings, the unmistakable work of marine creatures, clams, mollusks, that drill into stone. There is only one way those borings got that high up a dry column. The land sank. It sank so far that the sea flooded in and submerged the base of those pillars, and the sea creatures went to work. And then, over centuries, the land rose again, lifting the columns and their scars back up into the open air. That single building has recorded meters of rise and fall, again and again, like the slow breathing of a sleeping animal made visible in marble. The caldera has been doing this for thousands of years. Up, down, and right now the needle is pointing up faster than it has in living memory. So that brings us to the present and to a study that has set off alarm bells through the scientific community. Because in 2026, a new preprint laid out an argument that the people of Naples did not want to hear. That argument is this: the system is not merely restless, it is accelerating. The authors trace the slow inhale of the last 2 decades, plot the exponential climb in earthquakes, layer in the rising gas, and they reach a conclusion that lands like a stone in still water, that Campi Flegrei may be moving toward a major geological shift within the next decade. Not centuries from now, not in some abstract deep time future your grandchildren will read about. Within 10 years. The outcome, they are careful to say, is uncertain. It could be a swarm of damaging quakes. It could be ground cracking open across the city. It could be a small eruption, or it could stall and quiet again, the way the caldera has stalled before. But the trend line, the direction of travel, points one way, up, toward release. And here is the detail in that work that should make your skin prickle. The crust beneath Pozzuoli is not as strong as it once was. Through the unrest crises of the 1950s, the 1970s, and the 1980s, episodes that lifted the town, cracked its buildings, and forced thousands from their homes, the rock above the magma was repeatedly stretched, fractured, and weakened. Each crisis left the caldera a little more brittle than it found it. So the ground you see today is not pristine stone resisting the pressure below. It is tired rock, fatigued rock. Rock that has been bent back and forth so many times that less force is now needed to finally break it. The system that needed 130 years to build to Monte Nuovo may not need 130 years again. Now, let's be precise about what the real danger actually is, because the word supervolcano does a lot of damage to clear thinking. The most likely near-term hazards are not the apocalyptic scenario. Scientists are not forecasting a continent-darkening super-eruption. What they are watching for is strong shaking that brings down weakened buildings, ground cracking and lurching beneath dense neighborhoods, and, at the more serious end, a small eruption on the modest scale of Monte Nuovo. That is the realistic worst case on the table right now, but do not let the word small comfort you, because here is the part everyone misses. Monte Nuovo in 1538 erupted into farmland and a handful of fishing villages. The same eruption today would punch up through one of the most densely populated patches of land in all of Europe. A small eruption in an empty field is a curiosity. A small eruption under a city of hundreds of thousands is a catastrophe. That is the real risk, not the size of the volcano, but the size of the crowd standing on it. And that brings us to the nightmare that keeps the planners awake. And it is not lava at all. It is logistics. The red zone evacuation plan covers roughly 500,000 people. Picture it. 500,000 human beings packed into a tight grid of narrow old streets, apartment towers, and choked coastal roads, all needing to leave, possibly with only hours of clear warning, because volcanic unrest does not always announce its final move with courtesy. There may be no clean signal that says, "Go now." How do you move a city the size of a national capital's downtown, in a panic, along roads that already gridlock on an ordinary afternoon? Where does everyone go? How fast can the order even be given? That, not the fire, not the ash, not the crater, is the part that terrifies the people responsible for the plan. The volcano is only half the problem. The other half is us. And yet, the single most important fact in this entire story is one of restraint. As of right now, scientists have not observed any direct signature of fresh magma migrating upward toward the surface. The uplift, the quakes, the gas, the current best evidence points to heated water and pressurized fluids surging through the shallow rock, not a column of molten rock climbing for the exit. That distinction is everything. It is the difference between a system that is restless and a system that is loading. The Italian authorities have kept the alert at yellow, attention, elevated, watchful, but firmly below evacuation. Tens of thousands of instruments listen to that ground every second of every day. If magma starts to move, they expect to see it. The word the scientists keep using is the most loaded word in geology yet. So this is where it stands. The ground rises roughly 10 millimeters every month. The fumaroles breathe out more gas than they used to. The quakes climb the chart. The crust grows more tired. The temple in Pozzuoli still wears the marks of every breath this caldera has ever taken. And 500,000 people go to work, sleep, and raise their children directly on top of a system that built a mountain in a single week. 500 years ago, the last time it exhaled. Nobody knows when it breathes out again. Maybe not for centuries, maybe within the decade the preprint warns of, maybe never in the violent way we fear, but the needle is pointing up and it has not stopped. So here is the question this channel wants to leave with you. If you lived in Pozzuoli, on ground that has risen more than a meter under your feet, on a caldera that history says is overdue to do something, would you stay in the home your family has held for generations, betting on the scientists and the yellow alert? Or would you have already packed and gone? Tell us in the comments exactly what you do, and tell us why. And subscribe, because the ground under Naples is still moving, and the moment that changes, this is where you'll hear it first.